Drivers exposed to mountains for the first time face a dilemma. They won't know for sure how long or how steep the hill is, how the truck will perform on the grade, or what awaits them on the way down. Therefore, they won't be sure how slow they should be driving or even what gear they should use. Many such hills now offer signage with advisories on what to expect on the hill, but they can seem vague to new drivers. In this video, we'll explain what those signs mean and how drivers can use them to safely descend even an unfamiliar hill. Also in this video, we'll explain how to use the iShift's manual mode and engine brake controls to prevent the truck from running away on you. I'm Equipment Editor Jim Park. Let's get started. These videos are made possible by Volvo Trucks North America. More serious grades have signs indicating the steepness of the grade or slope expressed as a percentage. In the case of the interstate-type highway, grades seldom exceed 6%. It's not uncommon on smaller highways to see grades up to 8% and sometimes higher. The higher the number, the steeper the slope. The percent is determined by comparing the vertical drop over the distance traveled. So for example, a 6% grade would have a vertical drop of 60 meters over 1 kilometer or 325 feet over 1 mile. What those signs don't tell you is that some parts of the hill may be steeper than the average, maybe 7 or 8%, or maybe shallower like 3 or 4%. And that can affect the gear you choose to descend the hill. So Andy, what's the approach to this particular situation?
So Jim, we're going to head down a hill and it starts at about a 6% grade and carries on up to an 8% grade. We were loaded, basically a 5-axle load, 80,000 pounds. So we need to decide what gear we think is going to allow us to safely descend this grade without the use of service brakes.
Okay.
So Volvo iShift 12-speed, what do you think we're going to need?
Top of my head, I'm going to say 6 or 7 probably.
Okay. So to be on the safe side then, we should probably start in 5th or 6th.
I'll go for that. Right now we're in 9th. Now just shifted to 10th.
Oh, so we should probably start slowing down.
Start a little bit higher.
Yeah, so the sign indicates 7% actually.
Okay,
and because I'm familiar with this hill, I know the part way down it's going to increase to 8%.
Okay.
So.
Now, I made a very common mistake there. I'll go back over that in just a minute. But sticking with the grade signs for a bit longer, some signage offers ambiguous warnings like use lower gear or slow down, but they don't tell you lower than what or how slow. Those are really just reminders that you're on a hill that requires a lot of attention. There's no particular safe speed because every truck and load are different. Heavy trucks obviously need to go slower than lightly loaded trucks to be safe, and that can throw rookie drivers a curveball. They may see other trucks going much faster down the hill, which can create some pressure for them to go faster too. But the thing is, those faster trucks may be lightly loaded, or the driver might be driving foolishly fast. You can't compare what other trucks are doing to what you need to be doing. Always drive your truck for the conditions you face. But the temptation to let it run here is high.
Right. Now, because I know this road, just down around the corner, it's going to level out for a ways. So we could let it roll off of this grade. Not quite yet. This would still be too early. The challenge for someone that doesn't know the road real well is you don't want to let it start running too soon because you can then get going too fast.
Well, I'm in a good position now though because my brakes are still cold.
Yeah.
I can realize my mistake here, get on the brakes and slow us down. But if I come over the top at 60, had to get on the brakes and slow us down.
Yeah.
Then I'd be in a slightly different position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you had been going down a couple of gears higher and you know, some people will ride the, you know, a light application or intermittent application the whole time you're building heat, and that's basically gonna get you in a position where you can't stop.
So back to my gaffe. The mistake I made back there was letting the truck run away on me. I was talking with Andy and not really focused on the task. I was barely 30 seconds into the run and already I was going too fast. I'm not blaming the iShift for what happened. but it's something that can happen pretty easily. First, because we were just getting started, I didn't have the engine brake on speed set on the cruise control. Next, the transmission is upshifting, even skip shifting, as we roll to take advantage of the vehicle momentum in a downgrade in order to save fuel. And if I'd let it run, the transmission would have continued upshifting all the way into 12th gear, and who knows how fast we'd be going by then. All automated manual transmissions do this, and it's a perfect fuel-saving strategy, but as you saw, there are times when the driver has to intervene and take control of the transmission in certain situations, such as when driving downhill. There are a few things you need to know about using a Volvo I-Shift transmission on a long grade. First, it'll keep upshifting as long as the downhill momentum causes the truck to pick up speed, unless you prevent it from doing so. To do that, you have to place the shifter into manual mode, designated by an M on the dashboard push-button shifter or on the full back position on the seat-mounted shifter. Once it's in manual mode, the transmission will not up or downshift on its own. This allows the driver to keep the truck in a certain gear while controlling the vehicle's speed with the engine brake. There are also a few things you should know about engine brakes. First, they're much more effective at high engine RPM. To a driver used to running the engine at low RPM on the highway, at say 11 or 1200 RPM for example, it'll seem strange to let the engine rev as high as 2200 RPM. But according to the manual for the D13 engine, Volvo says the engine brake produces 350 horsepower of retarding power at 1500 RPM and 500 retarding horsepower at 2200 RPM. So it's safe to run the engine that fast, but not to exceed that speed. Some fleets even prefer their drivers not to allow the engine to exceed 1900 or 2000 RPM for that additional safety margin.
And the important thing to remember, especially for people that are concerned about fuel economy, is that when the engine brake's operating on these engines, you're not burning any fuel. So the fact the engine brake works better at higher RPM at the 2000 or 2100 RPM, up to that sort of range, gives us a stronger holdback. We don't burn any fuel at all. So we used all that fuel to climb the hill, and now going back down the other side, we get to gain some of that back because we get to descend without the use of any fuel at all.
So there's no fuel economy penalty to running at 1800 RPM?
None at all. Not when the engine brake's activated.
Okay.
So now let's combine the engine brake with the I-Shift gear selector. Once you're holding a certain gear with the shifter in manual mode, you can control the vehicle speed by increasing or decreasing the retarding effect of the engine brake by toggling from position 1 through position 3. 1 is the minimum, 3 is the maximum. Use this flexibility to manage vehicle speed as the steepness of the grade changes. Position 3, for example, when the grade is steep, or position 1 when it levels out a bit. Volvo offers two versions of the I-Shift gear shifter interface, Basic and Premium. You should understand the difference because it could affect the way you use the transmission on a long, steep hill. With the Premium shifter, you can use the up and down buttons found on the left side of the shifter handle to upshift or downshift even when in manual mode. With the Basic shifter, you have to move the shifter into the D position first. If you want to upshift to a higher gear, moving it to D will allow the transmission to upshift automatically since the engine RPM is already pretty high. If you want to downshift to a lower gear to reduce speed and take advantage of the engine brake's retarding power, you may have to apply the service brakes to slow the truck. The in-dash driver display will indicate whether a downshift is possible. If you can safely downshift, simply pull the engine brake stalk all the way back to the B position. This will initiate the downshift and re-engage the engine brake. The process is the same when using the push-button dash-mounted shifter. You push M or D as required rather than moving the shift lever. With the Premium model, you can upshift or downshift using the plus or minus buttons on the dash shifter. This clip shows how we do a downshift.
Get it down.
Well, the jig's pulling us down.
And this clip shows how to do an upshift.
So this is not quite as steep as the last grade.
Okay.
The sign claims this to only be 6%, so we're not quite as steep. So 8th should definitely be our gear, and possibly even 9th on this grade. So are we in 2 or 3? We're in 2 right now.
We're in,
so let's go to 3.
Let's go to 3.
And it's slowing us,
It's
so
slowing
we can
us
we can probably bump up to 9th. There it is. So back to the third setting. So the objective is always to be running it at the highest possible RPM that the engine brake or whatever retarding device your truck has will hold you back without using the service brakes. And that's going to vary from vehicle to vehicle.
I should say here that other brands of automated transmissions have similar functionality, although they may operate slightly differently. Consult your driver's manual or talk to your supervisor about how your transmission works in such situations. So now that we've covered the bases on how to use the I-shift to hold a gear, upshift, and downshift on a grade, we're ready to tackle the 6-mile, 7% Blueberry Paulson Hill in the heart of British Columbia's Kootenay Mountains. That's coming up next. I'm Equipment Editor Jim Park.